Tokyo Electric Power has started testing a new radioactive water processing instrument at its Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, but its goal of achieving a cold shutdown may be behind schedule. The Fukushima nuclear accident has set back Japan's nuclear energy program, but could open up new opportunities in other renewable energy areas. Let's get straight to Glen now, partner and head of sales at JI Asia. He's joining us now live from Tokyo. Glen, it's good to have you with us today. Look, obviously the earthquake has caused some serious issues when it comes to Japan's future decisions when it comes to nuclear power. What's your view in terms of what the strategy is going to be going forward? Because clearly there'll be some trading opportunities here.
Indeed. We think very strongly that an energy policy in Japan needs to turn, and probably will turn, very sharply away from nuclear and towards something in between where Japan eventually wants to go, which is probably very much renewable-based energy, to something in between, a stepping stone likely to be heavily dependent on the likes of LNG and perhaps geothermal.
Now, I notice, Glen, I've got some of your notes in front of me, and you've said a new energy policy would also have a positive impact by lowering costs, benefiting companies, weakening the yen, providing jobs, creating new exports. I mean, just how much of an impact do you think that a different energy policy would actually have on economic growth in Japan?
Indeed, Oriel, I think it could have a huge impact on Japan. At this point, with the yen as strong as it is, and with Japan having come through a long period of deflation and poor economic conditions, a large infrastructure investment in something like energy would be perfect for Japan in many regards. For example, Japan has long been a leader in solar and wind technologies, and yet has largely not invested in that in its own country and in its own companies. By investing in that at a large-scale infrastructure base at this point in Japan's history, it could have huge impact going forward, I think, in terms of creating jobs, opportunities for companies then to create an export industry with renewable energy technologies, as well as lowering energy costs and thus attracting more industries back into Japan. And on top of that, I think with the strengthening yen and those issues, a large infrastructure investment at this point would be equivalent to what many of Japan's competitors are doing, and that is a quantitative easing effect in that a large infrastructure project would be risk-taking effectively for future growth, which again, we know that Japan desperately needs growth back in its economy if the economy is going to take off again.
Well, Glen, give us some names then. Which companies out there in Japan do you think investors should be taking a closer look at right now, given this energy situation?
Sure. Well, in Japan, it's difficult to find pure plays in the areas of solar and renewable energy. Many of the large companies like Kyocera and Sharp obviously have great solar technologies. The problem there in investing is that the percentage of operating profit that comes from those sectors is actually quite small. As I mentioned earlier, a stepping stone towards that, likely in the new energy policy, will lean heavily on the likes of LNG. And LNG companies like JGC and Chiyoda are perfectly positioned in Japan as kind of the #1 global players in engineering plant construction to benefit from that policy. So I would look at companies LNG exposed, longer-term investors. I think it would be great to look at more solar-related and renewable energy-related plays, including wind technologies. Perhaps Mitsubishi there has some great wind technologies. And then in small cap space, little known is a company, consumer finance company called JAX in Japan, that is actually focused quite heavily on lending to consumers for installation of solar systems in their homes. So again, I would expect companies like that to benefit from any shift in energy policy towards LNG and renewables going forward.
Glen, just before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about the yen. You know, you mentioned the strengthening yen a couple of times during our conversation. I'm interested to see, though, that you believe that corporate Japan has already, I guess, adapted to the strength of the yen. You know, is this the new normal?
Well, I think in a sense it is. I think Japan has not made decisions over the past 20 years, which has led to the current situation. Where many of Japan's competitors on a global basis have actively managed their currencies in such a way that they've been able to adjust. Corporate Japan, I think, has surprisingly and beyond many people's expectations been able to manage their operating profits and their production offshore And
Glen, unfortunately, I do need to jump in. We are up against a hard break. Thank you so much for joining us.